We did not create this crisis, but we are going to resolve it.
Mayor Mamdani says the Adams administration is to blame for the city's $12 billion budget gap. We sat down for an exclusive in-depth interview at City Hall earlier today, where the mayor pushed for a tax increase on the wealthiest New Yorkers and corporations, as well as his relationship with President Trump. Our full conversation is coming up in just a minute.
We're not raising taxes in the state of New York. I'm not raising taxes for the sake of raising taxes.
Governor Kathy Hochul once again pushed back on Mayor Mamdani's calls for a tax hike. And we'll break down all of that and more when I'm joined by my weekly politics panel. For the best news, debate, and analysis of New York politics, join us inside City Hall. Good evening. Welcome to Inside City Hall for Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. I'm Errol Louis. Mayor Zohran Mamdani today painted a dire picture of the city's finances, blaming his predecessor, Eric Adams, for mismanaging the city budget. As his administration seeks to navigate a $12 billion shortfall over the next 2 years, the mayor made his case for raising taxes on corporations and the city's wealthiest earners, despite objections from Governor Hochul. Earlier this afternoon, I sat down with the mayor for the first time since taking office for an exclusive in-depth discussion about the city budget and the rising national tensions over ICE, over his relationships with Hochul, and much more. Here's the first part of our conversation. You announced today that the city's finances under Mayor Adams were, quote, mismanaged at every turn. You're calling it ABC, the Adams budget crisis. What was an example of something that was mismanaged?
I think one of the key examples, Errol, was the continued lack of budgeting for costs of programs that the city had. When you're talking about shelter costs or you're talking about cash assistance, you would sometimes see almost half of the program's cost kept off the books. And what this would do is hide the true scale of cost and the actual scale of crisis from New Yorkers. And so today what we wanted to do is be very upfront and direct about the decisions that brought us to this point where we now have a fiscal gap of about $12 billion, larger than even the Great Recession.
Adams himself had an unfair budget crisis of his own, right? I mean, the flood of migrants arrived. There wasn't really a lot of help coming from Washington, D.C. Position?
Well, I think the difficult thing here is we all could have seen that these costs would be greater than what they were budgeted for. In fact, many did see. Many journalists saw it. Many controllers saw it. Brad Lander, Mark Levine, Tom DiNapoli, city and state level. And yet every time that $12 billion estimate came, the city would say, actually, it's not that bad. Actually, it's just more like this. And we wanted to be honest that as soon as we peeked under the hood, we knew it was going to be tough. What we found, however, is very much in line with these controllers' estimates.
When we hear that the city had an $8 billion in reserves, is the problem you're talking about net of that $8 billion? Does that include it, or does that offset some of the 12 that you're talking about?
The problem we're talking about is this is structural. We're looking at an issue that is only going to grow if we do not actually address it at the source. And one of the sources is the city's relationship with the state, where the city contributes 54.5% of the state's revenues, but only receives 40%. The other is that we need to raise taxes on the wealthiest New Yorkers and the most profitable corporations. These are two key parts of what we have to do to right this ship, not just for the current fiscal year and the next fiscal year, but to make sure that we're on a firm financial footing.
I definitely want to ask you about that, but wasn't part of the problem that all of the usual watchdogs were actually seeking higher office? I mean, the Speaker of the Council was running for mayor. The sitting controller was running for mayor. The chair of the Finance Committee was running for controller. Everybody had an incentive to kind of sweep this off to the side, and that's more or less what happened.
Well, I think you actually found that the former controller did issue this same warning of a $12 billion gap, and that it wasn't for a lack of knowledge, but it was for a lack of admission from City Hall. And that's what's so difficult, is that we have seen that even when this gap was growing, the prior administration made the decision to add close to $2 billion in additional expenses. And when you choose to do that amidst this widening chasm between what you are receiving, you are creating what is effectively a poison chalice for the next administration. And now we did not create this crisis, but we are going to resolve it. The first way that we do so is to be honest with New Yorkers about what we're actually looking at.
To the extent that there was poor budgeting going on under the prior administration, I mean, the remedy on one level is to vote them out. which is pretty much what happened, right? That's why you're the mayor now.
Yes, here I am. And I think the issue is that many New Yorkers, myself included, we assumed that there was going to be some kind of a fiscal deficit. The issue is that the scale of this deficit, it dwarfs the Great Recession.
Right.
That's what we're talking about at hand. And what's so hard to come to terms with is that we had not seen any indications from the prior administration that they were looking at this on the other side. This was something that they kept pushing off until it wasn't their problem. It is, however, New York City's, and we're going to resolve it.
Okay. You mentioned Governor Cuomo in your press conference today, shortchanging. In at least one of his budgets, you were in the legislature and voted for his budget, right, in 2021?
In 2021, we actually overcame his objections to raise taxes on the wealthiest and raising about $4 billion in new revenue. Now, that was one of the many things we were able to achieve that year over his objections. And what we saw is that if we had, in fact, had someone with a vision of helping the city, we would not have been looking at the 10 years prior to that we did with then Governor Cuomo. Because I think this was someone who sought at almost every opportunity to shift the cost burden from the state to the city. Because before he was governor, it wasn't that wide of a chasm between what the city was contributing and receiving. The chasm is a direct result of his leadership of the state.
Is some of that a result of the greater economic health of the city as compared to the rest of the state?
I think, frankly, the city's economic health has been a generator for the state and also for the country. However, what we saw, it looked more like a politics motivated by a cruel opposed to anything else.
Well, I'm not going to defend Andrew Cuomo. I'm sure he'll get to that, and you may hear from him at some point. But I'm mindful of the fact that every year when they talk about the poorest cities in the country, several of them are upstate New York cities. You know, you go to Syracuse, you go to parts of Rochester. They're really hurting up there. Places like Newburgh, you know, even in some of the close-in suburbs. To the extent that New York City has the resources, shouldn't some of that go to make life a little easier for some of them?
I think there's no question that we should be fighting for needy New Yorkers across the state. The issue, however, is the cost shifting, the cost burden, all of the politics behind all of this. Nothing had to do with actually helping anyone in need. It had to do with hurting this city and extracting wealth from these 5 boroughs. And what we want to do is to ensure that no longer are we simply the most expensive city in the United States of America or the wealthiest in the wealthiest country in the world. We also have to address the fact that 1 in 4 are living in poverty. That continues to be the case even amidst this great wealth.
Now, how do you intend to convince Albany? And I don't mean just the governor, but also the legislature. As a former legislator, you know that there's an upstate-downstate connection. If you start saying, well, we've paid too much for this, upstate legislators are going to take note of this, and they're going to not only not vote for tax increases, but they may decide to punish you in other ways, like decide that mayoral control needs to be shortened to 1 year or 2.
Well, I think, honestly, having a direct and frank conversation is something that is often missing in the way that City Hall travels to Albany. And I'm going to be very open about the scale of this crisis and also the fact that the solutions that we are proposing, the income tax, for example, it's about an income tax not on the entire state, but right here in New York City. It's about raising the personal income tax by 2% on the top 1%. That's New Yorkers who make more than $1 million a year. And I actually had a New Yorker who turned to me and self-identified as a millionaire and said, is it true you want to tax millionaires? I said, it is true. They said, well, I'm going to leave. I said, I don't think you are. They said, why not? I said, because it's only a 2% increase. It's $20,000 on an income of $1 million. And when they realized what it was, they said, that's probably right.
Said I spent more than that on a weekend, right? At a party. Yeah.
But I think there's so much of this this specter of capital flight that is not actually tied to the amounts that we are speaking about, the proposals that we actually have on hand.
Do you see yourself as part of a tradition? Because I could give you all of the history. It all happened in this building where, you know, John Lindsay blamed his predecessor Wagner, and then Beam blamed Lindsay for giving him a tough set of budgets that he didn't properly account for. And certainly Koch did that with Beam, and on and on and on throughout the decades.
Well, I think it's just about being honest. I think that we are here, it's day 28 of the administration, and we are inheriting a $12 billion fiscal debt. And I would be honest if we had made expenses ourselves that we had not anticipated, but it's 28 days. You can't spend $12 billion in 28 days. So what we're finding under the hood, it is staggering And I think usually, especially as someone who has been a legislator, we would look at controller reports as perhaps one side of a larger conversation. It's rare that the gap between the executive and the controller is so great, and then when you look under the hood, you find it's in fact nowhere near where the executive has said. It's entirely where the controller has said, and that's just at this point.
Okay, so you and the council have some tough choices to make. On the campaign trail, you pointed to things like vacancies in the Corporations Council's office and said that you were going to hire more lawyers to help New Yorkers avoid eviction, that kind of thing. Are things like that going to maybe not happen? Or are they on the chopping block?
We're going to have over the next few weeks as we prepare the preliminary budget on February 17th. One thing I will say, however, is that part of what has driven this deficit has also been the lack of staffing to even handle judgments and claims on behalf of the city. We've seen on and on that number has ballooned, especially as those departments are not able to keep up with the number that they're facing. So many of these things are actually intertangled, but we're going to be looking more and more into all of it.
Yeah, the Independent Budget Office says this every year, that for every person you hire for the finance division, meaning the people who collect taxes, they more than pay for their salary several times over. You promised 1% of the budget will go to parks. Is that something you're going to stick to?
I mean, these are all the commitments that we intend to reach. The question is, at what timetable and what timeline, given the scale of this crisis?
Something you and I have talked about before is property taxes. And this is something where you don't have to go to Albany. You don't really have to talk to anybody except the folks on the other. Mindful that when Mayor Bloomberg came in shortly after 9/11, they got an 18.5% increase in property taxes, a massive, massive increase, because it was understood that it was an extraordinary time that required an extraordinary response. Is that something you would consider?
You know, I think that putting the bill of this fiscal crisis on the backs of middle-class New Yorkers, a crisis that they had nothing to do, that is not where we want to go. What we are talking about instead is not just changing the city and the state's relationship, but talking about taxing New Yorkers who make $1 million or more a year. And I've spent quite some time over the course of the campaign and you know, even in conversations that we've had about the fact that the property tax system itself is a broken one. It needs to be reformed, and that's also something that I care very deeply about.
Are you planning a campaign to maybe pressure the legislature into raising income taxes? I'm mindful of Bill de Blasio going up there. He had a bunch of rallies. It's, if not backfired, at least not worked. They didn't give him the increase that he was looking for, and it really sort of deepened the animosity from Governor Cuomo.
I think I'm going to be just open and honest and direct, because I think for far too long, when you are in the legislature, you don't get a full picture of what the city is actually facing. And we're going to be very clear. Today, we announced that it was ABC, as you said, Adams' budget crisis. Soon we'll announce an updated figure given the increased revenue that we might expect, the better-than-expected Wall Street bonuses. What is the actual gap over the course of these 2 fiscal years? And then on the 17th, we're going to have the preliminary budget itself. Right. And then in between all of this, I'll be going up to Albany for, you know, what is affectionately known as Tin Cup Day.
Well.
And making very clear, this is the scale of the crisis at hand. This is where we need Albany's partnership to actually resolve it.
It is time now for a break. We'll bring you more of my conversation with Mayor Mamdani, where he weighed in on his relationship to Governor Hochul, and whether he found a note that Mayor Eric Adams was supposed to have left for him at Gracie Mansion. That and much more is coming up in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day, with in-depth coverage of the day's news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Tomorrow, some morning sunshine possible. Clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One. Weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum and Xfinity customers.
When your 5G and fiber-powered internet combine for the fastest wireless speeds, so you can sweat for the right reasons. It's only the seamless connection you love at home, everywhere you go. It's only everything.
I'm Sandra, this is Jorge, and we were adopted in 2019. I remember when they first came to us, Michael was already a teenager. The whole cliche of they're so lucky to have you guys, and it's the other way around. They have changed our family for the better. They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning.
Today's story is love local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. During my exclusive wide-ranging discussion with Mayor Mamdani earlier today, we spoke about how he is navigating his differences with President Donald Trump, how he is protecting New Yorkers from aggressive federal immigration raids, and how he plans to handle Rikers Island. Here's the final part of our conversation. You identified Governor Cuomo as part of the problem. You didn't say much about Governor Hochul, who's been there for, over 4 years now. What role does she play in this? Have her budgets been fair to the city?
I think Governor Hochul has been a marked departure from Governor Cuomo's approach, and I've been heartened by the relationship that we've been developing and building, and frankly also exhibiting on day 8 of our administration, the partnership that yielded more than $1 billion in state funding for delivering universal child care right here in New York City.
Okay, let's switch topics. President Trump said yesterday that he'd love for you to be, quote, successful as mayor. Is there anything you'd like to see him do or not do to help with that success?
Well, I think the thing that the president also shared with me, as well as with the press corps outside of within the Oval Office, was that the better New York City does, the happier he is. And so I make very clear what impacts federal policy have on our city. Now, when we're talking about ICE raids, for example, those, I've said to him directly, are cruel and inhumane. They do nothing to serve the interest of public safety. When we're talking about some of these proposals to withhold funding, that would devastate New York City. Now, when the president is talking about a cap on credit card interest fees, I think that would actually be to the benefit of many working New Yorkers.
When you say something that, his deportation campaign is cruel and inhumane, what does he say to something like that?
Well, I think we had an honest and firm disagreement on it, and I made very clear that the city cares deeply about public safety, because usually that is the justification for all of these kinds of actions. And what I said is that to deliver that public safety, we have the NYPD. We do not need ICE to be operating here within New York City, creating a climate of terror and fear amongst New Yorkers, no matter their immigration status. And I think this is what it comes back to, is that I hear from so many people in our city who tell me that they are fearful of even leaving their home because of what they see ICE doing on a daily basis. We're talking about a federal agency that is pulling people out of their cars, out of their homes, out of their lives, that is killing people in this country. And you're asking people to still believe in government. It is a very difficult mismatch.
Are you afraid that something like that could happen here in New York City?
I'm doing everything I can to ensure that it never does. And I think that it is a fear that many New Yorkers have, and my job is to show them that I'm the mayor of this entire city, which includes more than 3 million New Yorkers who are immigrants, myself included.
Do you have, are you planning any executive orders, or have you given instructions to the NYPD and other places to try and head off these kind of problems?
I've been very clear across city government that we want to fully follow the law, especially when it comes to our sanctuary city policies. And I wish that wasn't worthy of announcing to you. But frankly, there is a contrast between the prior administration and our own when it comes to the willingness to tell New Yorkers of their own rights. That means letting parents know that when their children go into a school, ICE agents will not be allowed into that school unless they provide a judicial warrant signed by a judge. And so knowing your rights is something that we want to make sure that every New Yorker does, but then also making clear that we're not here to assist ICE in their operations. We are here to conduct our own operations in full compliance with our own laws.
The mayor of Minneapolis, and I believe the governor as well out in Minnesota, told the public, they suggested that they film and witness what ICE is up to. Do you feel that way?
I've said in a video that I shared with New Yorkers that you can and should film ICE, and that this is part of what it means to exercise your full constitutional rights.
Well, let me ask you about your corrections commissioner. I don't think you've announced one just yet, but we have the appointment of a de facto receiver that's going to basically oversee Rikers Island for the foreseeable future. I imagine it would take away a lot of discretion from whoever that commissioner is. How are you planning to handle that?
Well, I think this is an opportunity, frankly, for us to enter into a new chapter, and I look forward to working closely with that appointment, because what it shows us is that this is a chance for us to end not just the dysfunction and disorder, but frankly the depravity that we've seen. I mean, the last time I went to Rikers Island, a colleague of mine was there with me, and an incarcerated New Yorker tried to take their own life in front of her. That's what we are talking about when we think about the despair on that island. We have to do everything we can to close Rikers, and I think that this is one pathway towards that.
Do you have a short list for a commissioner?
Those are interviews that we're conducting.
Okay. I want to ask you about the nurses' strike. You stood on the picket line with striking nurses. Isn't the mayor supposed to be neutral in a case like this? Because I think you subsequently said you want to offer City Hall as a place for negotiations to take place, but nobody's going to take you up on that because you're already sort of picking sides.
Look, I've always said that I encourage everyone to remain at the bargaining table and to bring a swift resolution to the strike. And I also want to be very clear and direct with New Yorkers that when we're talking about nurses, their value should never be in question. And this is a city where too many working people have been pushed out of it. I can tell you there's so many times. I'm getting an allergy shot once a week for 7 months so that we can have a cat or cats, or we'll figure out how many. And I went into the elevator for the doctor's office, and there was a woman across from me who worked there, and she let out a deep sigh. And I asked her, you know, how's your day going? She said, it's a long day, and I still have to get back to Connecticut. And I said, what do you mean? She said, that's where I live.
Wow.
That's the only place I can afford.
It's a long commute.
And there's just too many nurses who, when you ask them, how long is your commute, they tell you an hour distance that is beyond the state. That's what we've done here.
Right. Later this year, the contract with DC 37 is going to be up. Are you prepared for people picketing and you're the boss and they're asking you for better working conditions and pay?
I am prepared, and I think that the workers of DC 37 do incredible work across the city, and far too often it's not recognized. And I can tell you myself, I've just seen over the 20-odd days that I've been the mayor, so much of what keeps the city running are the workers whose names most New Yorkers never know.
Do you think they deserve a raise?
I think that we're going to get into negotiations.
Okay. I mean, you know, because you're saying at one and the same time, we've got a $12 billion hole, we're going to have to fill this, we're going to have to figure this out, but we value these workers, and, you know, they're going to be wondering if they're going to get what they're looking for at the bargaining table.
We do value them. I think that what this comes back to is, with a gap this large, there is a temptation. Oftentimes I'm asked, you know, what services we're willing to cut. And what I talk about is that too often it's working people that are offered as the first answer to a crisis they never created. Our first answer has to be, how do we get our city back on firm financial footing? And how do we do so by taxing those with the most a little bit more, changing our relationship with the state a little bit more, bringing it to a place where working people can afford to live here. Because I really do believe that DC 37 workers across this entire city, they're giving everything they can to this city, and yet too often they're not even given a handshake in return.
There are times when wealthy New Yorkers, especially the business community, have said, we'll pay more in taxes, but we want a lockbox. We want some efficiency. We want to know where this money is going to go. Is that the kind of conversation you're willing to have?
I think that's fair. I think that it is absolutely fair for us to also be looking for savings and efficiencies. And what I mean by that is taking a hard look at every dollar the city spends and interrogating whether it's an effective use of that funding. Because we are not just pursuing increased taxes on the wealthiest, not just pursuing a different relationship with the state, but also looking at city government itself and making sure every dollar is one that's well spent.
Okay, little council business before we go. The city council is poised to override some of Mayor Adams' final vetoes, but it reportedly is going to keep 3 of them in place, including one that would have mandated, well, it's called the COPA bill, that would have mandated the selling of certain kinds of properties or right of first refusal to nonprofit agencies. What is your position on that?
I support the COPA bill. And that's a piece of legislation that I think is one that is part of how we address this housing crisis, and I think it's very much in line with what the city needs to be doing.
Okay. And then finally, before I let you go, there was talk about there being a note left for you by your predecessor. Did Mayor Adams leave you a note?
I wish you would have told me where it was.
No note?
Nothing.
No note.
If you see him.
Okay.
Ask
well,
him.
no.
No
Man,
note, no ghost. Not yet.
No cryptocurrency, no
Definitely
Bitcoin,
no crypto.
no none of that.
It is time now for a break. Coming up, we'll keep our focus on my conversation with Mayor Mamdani and break down some of the highlights of his first few weeks in office. Stay with us.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
There's nothing quite like the feeling of going to the theater. Onstage celebrates that excitement every week by taking you behind the scenes with the latest news and in-depth interviews of the hottest shows on and off Broadway. So grab a seat, because this is a show you won't want to miss. Join us every Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 p.m. for Onstage.
Onstage is presented by your Tri-State Cadillac dealers. Discover which Cadillac is right for you and elevate your journey.
It's only a hike. It's only made possible by Spectrum Business connecting healthcare providers of all sizes. Like hospitals relying on the Spectrum Fiber broadband network with industry-leading reliability. Practices keeping patient data safe with advanced security. Pharmacies accessing records in the cloud without fail. It's tailored connectivity solutions built for life-changing moments. It's only a hike. It's only everything. Spectrum Business.
Mom was always organized, but she started forgetting to pay her bills on time.
And she'd buy the same gifts over and over.
Telling the girl diagnosis was really hard. At first we had our cries, but then we were like, okay, let's make a plan.
Early detection gave us time to adapt together.
It's so important for you to think about what you can do and making the most of what you have.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
From my time growing up in Queens watching New York One to my time reporting here, I've seen how quickly a story can change. At News All Day, we bring you the news as it's happening, from around the boroughs to local government to your neighborhood, because our city never stops moving.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ferry with the day's developing stories, but first,
stay up to date and informed with News All Day, weekdays from noon to 4.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Before I sat down with Mayor Mamdani in the Blue Room earlier today, he held a news conference to draw attention to the $12 billion budget gap facing the city over the next 2 years. While the mayor pointed fingers at the previous administration, the former mayor, Eric Adams, who's only been out of office for 28 days, says he is not to blame. Our Ayanna Harry was at City Hall today and joins me now with more. Good evening, Ayanna.
Good evening, Errol. In addition to sitting down with you for a wide-ranging interview, this was really a whirlwind day for the new mayor. His day actually began with a live interview on CNBC, where Mayor Zohran Mamdani once again repeated his call to raise taxes by 2% for the wealthiest of New Yorkers, saying he doesn't believe that a modest, he's describing it as a modest tax hike for millionaires would cause a large number of people to leave New York State. And then, as you mentioned, Errol Mamdani held a budget briefing in the Blue Room, and he wanted to raise attention to what his administration has found so far in the first few weeks in City Hall, saying what they have uncovered, staggering that 2-year, $12 billion budget gap. And he really began to place the blame on the previous administration, saying they failed to accurately budget for services that New Yorkers rely on, services like housing vouchers, shelters, and also services for special education programming. Mamdani believes Adams kept quiet about some of the real financial issues in the city because he was doing so for his own political advantage. Of course, Mayor Eric Adams pushed back very vigorously today. A spokesperson for the mayor released a statement saying Mayor Adams led a real recovery through steady leadership and tough decisions. Blaming him for decades-old city-state funding inequities is inaccurate and disingenuous. And also weighing in on the conversation today, the Citizens Budget Commission, they provided some pushback on the mayor's number, acknowledging that they project a budget gap of about projected, and they had a warning about raising taxes. The president of the Citizens Budget Commission, Andrew Ryan, saying when it comes to the budget, the city should spend the current $120 billion efficiently on the right programs before asking New Yorkers for more money. Higher taxes risk New York's ability to attract and keep businesses and people. So we saw throughout the day some real dialogue on the numbers that the mayor is talking about, and also on the best solution to fix. Everyone acknowledges that there is a budget shortfall. How big or small it is, there's some conversation. Who's to blame? There's some conversation. And the way to fix it, all up for debate as well.
And it is accurate to say that some of this is structural and long predates this administration or the one before.
That's correct. And that's part of what Mayor Mamdani talked about as well. And he focuses on the relationship between the state government and the city, saying that for many, many years, the city has given from the state. And he points back to Governor Andrew Cuomo, saying this is something that Cuomo really worked to do throughout his decade in office, shift more and more spending that used to be relegated to the state to the city. And he said that Kathy Hochul has been better, but now Zohran Mamdani is saying himself he's going to go up in person to Albany and lobby the governor for more funding and to get this tax hike. And so we're going to see how it all plays out, but interesting, he's criticizing Governor Cuomo, but not Governor Hochul.
Right. And of course, he's going to need some allies in the legislature to help move this agenda forward. The governor's been pretty clear about not raising taxes on the wealthy, but she's one of 3 people in a room, and I guess he's going to need to talk to the other 2.
Correct. And one of the reporters pointed out today he has not been critical of Carl Hastie or Andrea Stewart-Cousins in his criticism so far, so perhaps he is working those relationships.
Okay. Thanks very much, Ayanna. We're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, Governor Hochul Mamdani's calls to tax wealthy earners. We'll tell you how she responded to the mayor in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
My time at New York One has shown me that in the city that never sleeps, the news never stops. So as the day winds down, turn to the rush hour.
Good afternoon, I'm Monica Perkins.
To catch up on the stories that matter across the 5 boroughs, with in-depth interviews from the city's newsmakers, plus the latest forecast. Catching you up with today, preparing you for tomorrow. Right here on the Rush Hour. Weekdays from 4 to 7 p.m.
It's only a slice. It's only made possible by Spectrum, connecting businesses of all sizes. Businesses, instantly serving up orders and inventory on the Spectrum Fiber broadband network. And factories, seamlessly connecting to farmers in the field with tailored solutions that always deliver. It's only a slice. It's only everything. Get your business free fiber-powered internet forever. Call to find out how.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force, and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is, my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakimick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
At Spectrum Noticias, we recognize that our New York City community is vibrant and diverse.
Spectrum Noticias of the stories that matter in our communities and across the country.
Our journalists are based in the neighborhoods we cover, ensuring you get in-depth reporting on what's happening in the places we call home.
So join us at Spectrum Noticias. We're always on, always there for you.
Now available on your TV. Check your local listings. Also available on the Spectrum News app.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Despite Mayor Mamdani's proposals for tax hikes on the rich, Governor Hochul told reporters that she is still a hard no. The potential standoff comes as Hochul welcomed a wave of union endorsements ahead of next week's state Democratic Party convention. Our State House reporter Bernadette Hogan joins me now with the details. Good evening, Bern.
Good evening, Errol. And this
Essentially the first major fight between Hochul and Mayor Mamdani, not just because Hochul is up for re-election, but also because Mayor Mamdani has to go up to Albany within the coming weeks to advocate for more dollars and policy from the legislature.
I'm not reading a whole lot into this.
Governor Kathy Hochul pushing back at newly minted Mayor Zohran Mamdani's pressure campaign to raise taxes, a power lever that not only does she hold the key to, but more importantly, opposes.
$17 billion in unanticipated revenues from Wall Street.
Arguing the state has enough cash to pay for current operations, fill holes already estimated by federal funding cuts, at least so far, all while funding at least 2 years of a limited child care pilot program for some 2-year-olds in the 5 boroughs.
Yeah, this is early for their team. They're just literally just getting under the hood. They didn't have access to a lot of information until just a few weeks ago.
Appearing to downplay his public lobbying.
But that's not new. He's been saying it since he was running for office a year ago, so I don't know what the newsflash is. I have said, the newsflash may be to you if you haven't heard me, we're not raising taxes in the state of New York. I'm not raising taxes for the sake of raising taxes. So he'll continue to say what he needs to say.
Hochul's $260 billion budget does not include new personal income or corporate tax hikes. Some argue it's because both notions could jeopardize her re-election bid statewide. But Mamdani has recently made the case that other parts of the state benefit from city tax receipts and Wall Street returns, and that the city should get more of a rebate.
I've invested $25 billion more, a 33.5% increase, just in the 4 years I've been governor into the city of New York, because the needs are great and I want to be helpful.
Meanwhile, the governor said she will reveal her lieutenant governor pick before the state Democratic Party convention next week, after New York One reported that at least 2 prominent Democrats, Queensborough President Donovan Richards and State Senator Jamal Bailey.
Say we'll do it right before the convention so we can introduce the candidate to all the people who'll be very excited to be in Syracuse for our convention.
Recalling her own experience getting a phone call to be former Governor Andrew Cuomo's running mate back in 2014.
I was asked a day and a half before the convention when I was lieutenant governor, so.
So a lot of considerations, Errol, especially on the tax talk, because again, the governor has said that she is opposed to this. All of this, of course, came up throughout the course of Mamdani's campaign and then culminated with the talk about setting up a universal child care program and then what happens after the 2 years that the state finishes funding. But the real question is, you know, is this just all talk in public now? But what are those private conversations looking like? Because the governor wasn't getting upset, as you could see from the video, by Mamdani really kind of taking her out on the mat with a really key policy.
It sounds like she's saying publicly and perhaps saying the same thing privately. It's like, look, you can ask for whatever you want, but I already gave you the answer.
Sure, and I talked to a couple people today who might be more privy to those conversations, and I said, well, it could be one of 2 things. Is she telling him something and then it's just, you know, they're talking past one another or they're talking to a wall? Or is it a wink, wink, and a nod? And she's saying, listen, I'll help you out within the next couple of years. Just let me get through the re-election because this will be unpopular. But then again, is this a bluff that Mamdani is presenting? He obviously does believe in a tax hike, but then is this his #1 pitch to Albany? And will we see some different negotiations, especially after Tin Cup Day and before the budget is closed?
Well, that's right. To the extent that he has to negotiate with the legislative leaders, because the governor's not the only relevant party here, they don't necessarily want to hear things about, hey, we're spending too much money outside of New York City. We need more of it to come back here. That's not going to get a warm reception in Albany.
Of course, and Mamdani saying that New York pays too much and needs to get more back. It's just an interesting conversation from a Democratic socialist who now wants to get more of a rebate again from the state.
Okay, thanks very much, Bernadette. We're going to take a short break now. Coming up, I'll talk more about my interview with Mayor Mamdani and his relationship to Governor Hochul when I'm joined by my weekly politics panel. Stay with us.
After 30 years of forecasting for New York, I've learned it takes a dedicated team to cover all the weather our city has to offer. As chief meteorologist at New York One, I'm honored to be able to help New Yorkers plan their day.
Morning, noon, or night, our team is here to bring you accurate forecasts you can count on.
from severe weather updates to our weather on the ones. Watch the New York One weather experts with your weather on the ones, on your TV, and on the go with the Spectrum News app.
I moved from Dallas to Los Angeles all by myself. The order of things I wanted to set up was internet, water, then power. I needed to take a shower, but I really did need the internet for work and to watch my shows. That's kind of a crazy thing to admit in front of a camera. Pretend I didn't say that. I got to Spectrum. I was so relieved that I was getting the best bang for my buck. It was a huge weight taken off of my shoulders.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable. The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
My father was a New York City firefighter. My mission, like his, is to serve New Yorkers in a city that doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Being with New York One since the beginning, I'm now honored to join you even earlier each weeknight. Starting at 8 with New York Tonight, we'll explore the latest news developments, followed by New York One at 10 to wrap up your day. So join me each weeknight starting at 8 right here on New York One.
The issue is that many New Yorkers, myself included, we assumed that there was going to be some kind of a fiscal deficit. The issue is that the scale of this deficit, it dwarfs the Great Recession.
Right.
That's what we're talking about at hand. And what's so hard to come to terms with is that we had not seen any indications from the prior administration that they were looking at this on the other side. This was something that they kept pushing off until it wasn't their problem. It is, however, New York City's, and we're going to resolve it.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. That was Mayor Mamdani describing a $12 billion budget gap that he is blaming on the Adams administration's, quote, staggering fiscal mismanagement. Mamdani is calling on the state to raise taxes on the wealthiest earners, despite Hochul's objections. And Mamdani also says it is time to recalibrate the city's fiscal relationship to New York State, citing an imbalance in how much the city contributes to state revenues. Past efforts at this, of course, were doomed to failure. So will Mamdani get his tax hike? Joining me now to talk about that and much more is my weekly politics panel. Laura Tamman is a professor at Pace University, and joining us as he does every Wednesday is New York One political commentator Gerson Barrero. Thank you both for being here. Good to see you. Look, mayors tend to, as I mentioned to Mayor Mamdani, tend to blame their predecessor for the hand that they've been dealt. Is this fundamentally different than what we've seen in the past?
Well, I think what's different is that he's telling Governor Hochul, I'm not blaming you right now, but I'm going to blame you if you don't give me what I need. So I think he's setting the stage with her for the future.
Okay. I mean, and she's free to ask. He's free to ask for what he wants, but we already have an answer.
He ain't getting it.
Yeah.
He ain't getting it. He owns this budget, whether it was $5 billion, which is the original amount that one of the candidates, who shall remain nameless, told me that he was preparing for, and the candidate did 11 budgets. We had a conversation off the record. Her said, I'm looking at least $5 billion that this guy is going to wallop me for, because he thought he was going to be the mayor. So did I. That he wasn't going to be this novice. And I do it with all respect. But that for Mayor Mamdani on his 28th day to be taking a serious subject like this, and all of a sudden he's like one of these people who didn't realize, oh my God, the taxes are there, and he was in the legislature. This is where I have a problem with his youth, his inexperience. And where's Dean Fullahan? Dean Fullahan, his first deputy mayor, knows this. He knows the game. You think that, I mean, Hochul is a weak governor, weak as I've seen in my lifetime, but she's not stupid politically. He ain't getting nothing, nada, zilch. The legislature is not gonna, how many times, Errol, I've been hearing since A-Beam. You're a professor, you know the history. Since A-Beam, this is why we have the Financial Control Board. This is why New York, allegedly in that news, daily news, that dropped dead New York City, that's not true. But the fact is that the Financial Control Board did that. So Mamdani, for not to be able to understand that, And on the heels of having people die on the streets, he's concentrating on this, and all of a sudden he's going to shift the conversation and blame the person that everybody rejected, which is Eric Adams.
Well, I mean, what I do remember, and you're alluding to the campaign, what I do remember from the campaign is that there were some people like Brad Lander, to a certain extent, the controller, the former controller, Scott Stringer, the former governor, Andrew Cuomo, who were urging some kind of, sort of fiscal sobriety, not making a lot of promises. On the other hand, the voters picked the guy who made the big promises.
Right, and the other thing that I remember from the campaign is the crowds that would be chanting, tax the rich, every time Governor Hochul showed up. In addition to Mamdani's campaign promises, he really heard that message loud and clear from the voters, and I think he's trying to capitalize on that energy and carry it through to Albany. Whether or not it'll work, we'll see, but I think he's trying to reset the terms of the debate.
Yeah, it's a very tough argument to make in Albany, in part because it's away from the media capital. So whatever you do, whether it's testimony or a rally or knocking on doors, it doesn't have the same impact as if it was happening in the middle of Times Square, for example, is one problem. And then the other is that there are hundreds and hundreds of legislators, most of whom are not from New York.
That's right. So we'll just have to see how much political capital Mamdani truly has in the negotiations to come. I think it's unclear.
I worry about the fact that we had a controller who you had here you had him here practically at the beginning. I think Brad Lander is one of the most irresponsible. I think Abe Beam wasn't a bad controller. He was a bad mayor. I'm aging myself here, Professor, but the fact is that I lived through that. And Brad Lander's got to be the most irresponsible controller because he's running for office. Now he's running, he can't even help his friend who he helped get elected, and they were all in to beat one guy, and they did it effectively. Mamdani's got to suck this up, and he can't be complaining, 12 billion, oh my God, the full. No, you're going to have to deal with this, and you're not going to get any of the money. You're not going to tax the rich. You're going to need that income. You have a state controller's race, which we forgot. Tom DiNapoli has a race in his hands. He's not going to go crazy either. So even though he doesn't play part of the budget, because he doesn't, so that you don't get confused or, don't get it twisted, he's not getting anything from Hochul.
Now, to be fair, Brad Lander, I'm sure he can point to a report, a piece of paper at some point, probably during the campaign, when he said, we've got a big budget problem here, right? It's not as if he was completely absent.
But that wasn't his campaign.
And Mamdani pointed out during his press conference, one of the things he loves to do is educate people, and he showed the projections that the controller made.
The state controller, the city controller.
Versus Eric Adams and how different they were.
Sure.
But he didn't do that during the campaign. He made promises in excess. That's the problem.
Right.
And all of a sudden it hits him.
But do you recognize my earlier point, right?
Yes.
Which is that, telling people that you're going to take the punch bowl away is a good way to get kicked out of the party, right? I mean, that's why Brad Lander is not the mayor now.
He's not the mayor. He's also not part of the administration, which I was surprised at. Mamdani doesn't want him anywhere near. And now he's running for the 10th Congressional District against Dan Goldman, which I don't know what he's doing in that race. He should be helping the city if he was a responsible. I was agreeing with Scott Stringer, which I barely did. I disagree with him all the time. I don't like Scott Stringer as a political, but he was right on what if you check what Scott Stringer said, very accurate.
No, I do remember it from the campaign trail. We've got more to talk about. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back with our politics panel. Stay with us.
We have so many ways to stay connected. A single touch can bring us closer to the families we love, the friends we know, and the city we share. And Spectrum helps us keep connected throughout the day, every day. Including more ways to watch New York One as a Spectrum Internet customer. Watch Spectrum News New York One on the Spectrum News app, available on all your favorite devices.
There's an international travel plan with Spectrum that was an additional $10 a month, as opposed to paying a ridiculous amount per day for roaming fees. This literally felt like my old phone carrier was reaching their hand into my wallet and just helping themselves to some of my cash. I like having no surprises when it comes to my cell phone bill. And with Spectrum, that's been the case. So it saved me a ton of money.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Tomorrow, some morning sunshine possible. Clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One. Weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum and Xfinity customers.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall, where I'm once again joined by my politics panel, Professor Laura Tammen and Herson Barrero. So tensions are running high after Alex Preddy was fatally shot by federal agents in Minneapolis last week. Doing damage control now. They've pulled out their Border Patrol Chief, Greg Bovino. They're deploying Border Czar Tom Homan in his place to take control of the situation there. It's not clear what is going to happen to the Homeland Secretary, Kristi Noem, under attack now from a lot of different quarters. People calling for her to step down. What do you think happens next? Where are we?
It's going to be hard for Mayor Mamdani to manage a situation if they come into New York City like they did in Minneapolis. I'm pretty worried.
Have they learned their lesson, though? I mean, the blowback has been really intense to what they've done out there.
Yeah, I mean, one can only hope, and especially hope that Commissioner Tisch has a relationship with the president that can also help bring the heat down in the situation.
Now, the other question, of course, politically is how should Democrats respond? There's some talk about whether a partial government shutdown should be triggered by somebody like Chuck Schumer.
They should wait to see. Because this has nothing to do with any of the people that are up there, or whoever he sends. It's just him ordering and listen to, whoever he's listening to, but it's him. He's the criminal in chief. He's the abuser. He's the one pushing this envelope. So let's not get this twisted, or, let's not get wrong on this. And let's not blame an individual he puts out or brings or sends. I think Mamdani is capable of handling it. This I'm confident that he's able to talk, surprisingly to me, that they're able to actually understand each other. I wouldn't have any other New Yorker other than Mayor Mamdani talk to this guy. Somehow they get it. He wishes that he was as young as Mamdani so that he could, all this future that he has, and that the world is changing. That's what I think he really likes about this kid. And I call him a kid, and not in a, I don't mean to offend you, but he, this is his old man, and he says, wow, I should have done that. I should have had the chance if I was that young. And I think there's envy there. But there's nobody else to listen to. It's a criminal in chief, and he is the person who is the biggest. A mafia don doesn't have anything to worry about. This guy has outdone anything that we could even imagine. So it isn't the person. And the Democrats, Chuck Schumer, shut the hell up. Hakeem Jeffries, shut the hell up. Nobody talk about budget. Let them walk into it. Senators, just keep quiet. Wait till he makes his moves. And then don't start talking about a government shutdown. He'll blame you.
Yeah, the Democratic base wants to see action. They want to see some fight, right?
Yeah, and with respect, I disagree. I think people are seeing these individual agents acting in ways that are unconscionable. So I do think that there's a real problem here, and that something needs to be done with the agency. You even had Republican Mike Lawler weigh in on this and say that there needed to be a change. So when the Republicans are calling for change, then I think that's a sign that something's really going to happen. So,
I mean, there's change, there's overhaul, there's abolishing the agency, which some people have been calling for, including the mayor.
Yeah. And this is going to go in, but I do think that ICE is not heading for anything good.
But condemnation is good enough. But my whole thing is, and I don't mean to mislead or people to mistake. No, but you start talking about government shutdown. That's an easy one because they've won it. Republicans want it, where they think that doesn't work, but rather be more active, denounce it. The Georgia Warner, he went down to do that, but not this thing, condone it. Be open to whatever needs to be done.
On the local level, Michael Lasher, the assemblyman who was one of the candidates running for Congress, actually went out there.
I was impressed by that.
Which was, say more, why?
Because it came out of nowhere. He left his family. He had been out in a protest. So he's talking the talk of not just wanting to go to Congress. He says, I can see he really wants this, and he'll know what the mission will be as part of representing his district. That I liked, even though I think it's wide open for anyone. I like the fact that it's a risky thing. I'm sure his wife wasn't doing it. You know, he's got a family. But I think that it showed real political cojones.
Yeah, there's a non-zero chance you could get your head cracked. Or
Exactly.
Even get shot out there. Right?
I'm sorry for using the word, but the fact is that's what I saw.
But yeah, I think he's doing the job he wants, which is somebody who's going to show up in difficult times.
Finally, Republicans are appalled by a recent ruling by a judge that tossed out the boundaries for New York's 11th congressional district, which is represented by Nicole Malliotakis. The current district that she represents was ruled a violation of the state constitution, and the judge has ruled that an independent redistricting commission has to redraw those lines by February 6th. That's just a couple of weeks from now. That does not guarantee a victory for the Democrats, though, right? I mean, at least two-thirds of the district would still be Staten Island.
I think it's a risk factor for even those talking about Dan Goldman leaving that. See, I think it's crazy. Nicole is a stronger candidate than people think. I think that she's a Trump supporter. She's a Trumper all the way. But that sort of is, for some people in Staten Island, she's not a Trumper enough. I think Nicole is in a safe place. I don't think, this could go on the courts all the way till the general election. And that could be crazy. It's destabilizing. It's insane. The Republicans, they need an overhaul, but that's their problem. I think that, what's his name, has got to go, Mr. Cox. Ya tú estás muy viejo, get the hell out.
Yeah, it's not good for voters for there to be so much uncertainty, and you can't change one congressional district. You, by definition, are changing others. So I think we just have to see how this plays out in the courts and stay tuned.
We shall see. Thank you very much, Professor Tamman. Good to see you, Gerson Barrero. That is going to do it for tonight's show. Be sure to join us tomorrow night when my guests will include City Controller Mark Levine. Until then, thanks for watching and have a great evening. We'll see you next time inside City Hall.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning.
You've done at the sports section.
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
You might think Spectrum is just for your home, but Spectrum is seamless connectivity everywhere. It's the network making the other networks. Connectivity from an actual internet company, because internet is what you actually use your phone for. It's way more than 5G. With Spectrum One, it's 5G and fiber-powered internet, seamlessly combined for the fastest wireless speeds. Don't believe us? Ask this guy. He's one of millions who already know. Oh yeah, and this guy too. Turns out people like their mobile from a seamless connectivity company. That's why Spectrum is the country's fastest growing mobile provider. Spectrum One. It's only the seamless connection you love at home, everywhere you go.